I want to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot lately. And it's been on my mind because in the last few weeks, I have had several parents call me and they had actually heard about the work I did, or we had had a conversation, or they had watched a video like 2 or 3 years ago. And they knew that I existed. They knew that this help was there, and some of them were strongly leaning towards doing this. Like they knew it was going to help, and yet they weren't ready, or they were moving, or they just thought, well, we're gonna go with this service that our counselor has told us about, or we're gonna wait and see if we can figure this out. Or maybe they were thinking, he's gonna outgrow this, or maybe we will just try another therapist, and maybe it's not that bad. Like he's not really having problems at school, so it's just, an us problem and we can figure it out. I am not here to shame anybody about making that decision. In fact, I do not pressure parents to work with me. I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to convince you to do something. I just come at it from a place of I understand and I know where I can help. And I've had so many of these conversations lately that it's made me really think about how I'm approaching this with you as the parent. Like, am I being serious enough about, like, don't wait? Why are you waiting? Let's get started. Like, at least do something. If you don't feel ready to do the full program, or you're not sure that your child needs all of that, then join one of the parent coaching groups and get a taste of what we can solve, because we can't solve all the really, huge, big things that are happening if there's a lot of violence and aggression in these groups, but we get started on working on some of the undertones of the thing. So I want to tell you about a family that I worked with that were very close to sending their child to residential treatment. In fact, they had already done all the paperwork, which the paperwork takes a lot if you're going through the services that are provided by your state. So she had, the parents had done all of the paperwork, had the other counselors, everything was set into motion, and then they heard about me. And they really didn't want to send this child away. It was attachment issues can be really hard to deal with in doing that. And the family was trying really hard. They were trying all the different things that they had been told to try, and they had all these different services that were in place, and accommodations at school, and different things like that. And so we started working together, and that is the point sometimes where parents need to be. Maybe you need to exhaust more of the resources and have a few more months or years of the struggle before you're willing to say, you know what, like, we need to figure this out at home, what is happening at home. And more than just how do I get my child to behave, but what does this child actually need from us? Like, how can we be the parents that this child needs without our whole family being in an uproar, right? And that's the other benefit of working with a family specialist, is that it's going to look at the whole family. And this particular family, this was the oldest child, but there was a child that was even like 2 years old, and we were working on things for him too, to get to, help improve the relationships and the functioning. And so we don't have to say like, oh, well, my youngest child is learning this stuff from the oldest child, and that's why they need to go away. We make the changes right there in the home, and it really starts with you as the parents. So as we work together, the first few weeks, I think we were like 2 weeks in, and the paperwork went through, and they were supposed to pick a residential center, and I think they had 30 days. If they didn't do it within 30 days, then it was going to be like starting over. So we were, really debating it, but they were seeing so many changes and had so much more hope that they decided to just table it. And they didn't even consider waiting the 30 days to table it. They just said, this is the direction we want to go. And they knew that I would be around to help them for, a long time later. And that if the child still needed residential treatment, they would know what to do and if that was necessary, because the main thing is we want this home to be safe. And so sometimes residential treatment is needed if it's not safe and we can't establish safety. But this family was doing such a good job, and things were so much safer as we were working together. In fact, the other child wrote me a note and said, "Thank you for making my family safe again." Not the really young one, but the middle child. So, when we start asking questions like, okay, so how do I help my family be in a place where we can stay connected and we can be safe at home? That's the work that I really care about. If that's your mindset, like, that's where I really do want to step in and help, and not just rely on services for your child outside of what you're doing in the home. And sometimes a family comes to me before they're completely out of options and we have that room to work. Another family, actually this is a lot of families that I worked with, have come to me after their child has been in residential treatment. And my favorite is when we're working together while the child is in residential and preparing them for when this child comes home. My doctorate was working on the benefit of parents being taught the skills rather than just teaching the skills to the child, but teaching the skills to the parents, so that when the child comes home or when they're having problems at home, the parents know what to do. And the benefits are so much more longer lasting than residential treatment benefits. There's usually some benefit that kids get in residential treatment. They have to get through a program, they have to make some changes, but their ability to learn that in this treatment center or in a counseling office or in partial hospitalization and then come home and apply it, it's that skill is not quite there for most kids. So they can make really big progress in residential treatment. And my thing about working with kids, with families after residential treatment, is like, let's protect the investment here. Let's not let things build up and get really bad again and now we're looking for another placement. Like, let's work on things now. And so when they come home, the home is not a residential treatment center, but the kid has come home with some skills in that system, and I can help you to set things up so that we have that similar structure. And even though you don't have a team like the residential, treatment does or the school does, I can help you to be on a family team and to work on those relationships with the siblings and how to handle homework and all the things that trigger kids at home, getting out the door in the morning and, dinners together and playing games together and all of that. Like, home is a real transition for kids, and it's all the things that sometimes trigger the problems in the first place. And it's not because you have a bad home or, something like that. It's that we just don't know how to make it work at home. And nobody knew, right? Like, most of the stuff that your kids are doing as they're older are still very toddler-like. And maybe the toddler years, they just didn't get that information. There's gaps in their skill sets. And so we have to go back. And a lot of parents will tell me when they contact me after their kids have been home from residential and they've already tried residential treatment, they'll be like, I wish that we had known about you before we sent our child there. But a lot of times I'm looking at, like, now. So do we want to stop things now and get to the point where we aren't looking at other treatment? And some parents will say, like, I wish we had known about you before it got to this point. And that sentence really sticks with me, because sometimes what a family needs isn't necessarily another place or another treatment to send the child to. And so I just help the family to understand what they can do differently. I am not saying that residential care is not a good answer. Sometimes it is totally appropriate for some children. But always we need to make sure that we are able to take what the good that happened there and help it to last, and to work with the family to build that that up. I've worked with families too where one child's gone to residential treatment and now we're watching the other children that are going to get to that same place. And parents will say that it's because they learned it from the older children, and it's just a pattern that I see, and I like to disrupt that pattern. It doesn't have to be this way, and we want to protect the investment that we've put in this older child of residential treatment, and we want to also not let things get to the point in the home where that's the only option we have for each one of the kids following. So this is why the conversations I've had recently have gotten my attention. Because I kept hearing, we knew about you, we heard about you a couple of years ago, we thought we would try something else, we didn't think it was bad enough, we thought maybe they would grow out of it, or we were moving, or we just weren't ready, and now they're calling. And again, I'm looking at a child that's older, I'm looking at a family that's more depleted, and I'm looking at parents that are saying, like, I wished I would have done this sooner. The idea that parents need to figure out for themselves that when something is serious enough. But I've come to realize that you don't always know. I mean, you're living inside of it and it can feel really bad, but maybe you don't know how to identify that. And you're just trying to get through the week or Tuesday night, and you're trying to get the other kids fed, and you're trying to jump through all the hoops that the school wants you to do, or the kids counselor. And maybe you're trying to figure out what is normal and what's not normal, because if you have a whole family full of neurodivergent people, there may be some things in it that are your normal. And I know some parents that think, maybe I'm making too big of a deal about this. Maybe I'm just too worried about it. But you don't have to wait until a situation is horrible to get help, and to get help for you as a parent. It's never too late to turn things around. That's one of the mottos that I teach. And it's not about being a bad parent. Saying that you need help or that you need a coach doesn't mean that you don't know the right things to do. It means that you need somebody there to walk you through it, and that your child needs a structured program to work through. And it doesn't mean that you're not consistent enough. It doesn't mean that you're permissive or too strict. And some parents feel like, oh, I created this. And so there's a lot of shame around the parenting family aspect of it. And so reaching out for help can be really challenging in itself. Mostly I see that people are in survival mode, and it's one crisis after another. And so the idea of trying something else completely different than what they've been trying can seem very daunting. But if you are walking on eggshells in your home, if you are afraid about what happens when you say no, if your other kids are being affected by what's happening, if the school is calling, if other people are saying, your child is really challenging to have around, you might be wondering, if your child can even safely remain at home. If you've tried different therapies, if you're trying all different kinds of medication, and parenting strategies and consequences and rewards are not working at all, then I don't want you to keep trying harder. I want you to get some better information. So what do I wish that families had done differently? Honestly, I wish that when they had called 2 or 3 years ago, we would have done the program. I wish that when their neighbor told them about the work I do, that they would have immediately called. And not just to hire me, but to just talk, let's talk about this. I don't want to convince you to work with me. If we're not a good fit, if you need a higher level of care, I will tell you. If you need a lower level of care, I will tell you. But I cannot see any downside. If you know that you have a challenging child, or you're struggling with the behaviors and you have these worries and fears, what is the downside of joining a parent coaching group and getting a taste to see if you do need something more or not, or if you can get some of these underlying issues solved and get some answers from a different perspective? And it's never too late to turn things around. So even if you are thinking like, oh my gosh, like now she's saying like I should have done this 3 years ago, so now I'm not going to do it at all. I'm not saying that at all. I want parents to know like it is never too late to turn it around. We can always work on this and it can always get better. And I want you to experience that yourself. There is no greater feeling, I think, as a parent to know what to do in really tough situations. It's just like, okay, this is hard, but I know what I'm going to do is huge as a parent. And the other thing is when you see the turnaround and when you see that things are getting better and that it may even take somebody else pointing that out, like, hey, remember the first time we talked and you were saying everything 47 times and now you say it once, and even though it takes them a few minutes to process it and say, yes, Mom, they're doing it, like that's huge. Remember when you couldn't all ride in the car together and now you can take a trip together or sit at the dinner table together? And so sometimes you just need somebody to point out that the trajectory is changing. One of the things that I love about this work is that sometimes I get to see what happens when parents finally stop trying to solve the problems by themselves. They come in exhausted, sometimes they're embarrassed, and usually they're scared. They're scared of what's happening in their home, or they're scared of what's the future looks like. And a lot of times they're skeptical. That word is hard to say. And sometimes maybe one parent is. And we start with like, okay, what's happening in your home? And not with what you should be doing or how you should do this differently. Not what consequences have you tried, but tell me what's happening. And I start to help you to build a bridge. And that bridge is between where your family is now and where you want your family to be. And it doesn't happen overnight, but parents start to see things differently. You can start to see things differently. And you start responding differently. And that's the huge part. It is so hard to move from reacting to the things that are happening or walking on eggshells in fear of what's going to happen to knowing how to respond and being able to respond. And that's where it really takes somebody there helping you in those moments. I love it when parents start to tell me, I know what to do now, because this isn't just for right now. It is for their future. It's for generations of kids and how to respond and how to deal. So if you've been watching this, and maybe if you've heard me before, maybe someone sent you my videos before, maybe a therapist referred you to me, maybe you don't even know how you started getting my emails with these videos in it, and you might be thinking like, I don't know if we're there yet. I want you to hear that you don't have to be at the breaking point to ask for help. You just have to want things to be different than they are right now, and set up a call. Or if you don't want to do a one-on-one call with me, you can just join a parent group and be among other parents that are reaching out for help and have similar issues and similar things that are going on, and just see what that feels like. And I just want to make sure that I say really clearly, because this is the part that I'm not sure I've been as clear as I could be, that some things, most of the things that you're talking to me about, don't get better just because a child gets older. They don't outgrow these kind of behaviors. I know parents that are basically in hostage situations with their 20-year-old kids living there, and none of this ever got resolved. We didn't learn how to do that. And so now this child is older and the behavior is stronger and the patterns are established. So don't wait. If you are wondering how you can help your child at home, then let's talk.